Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Causeway Challenge 2016, coming at you from the Bajai International Hotel in Johor Bahru, Malaysia. This is Chris May of Australia speaking, and I'll be joined by my co-commentator Matthews of Canada. We are about to watch a game between the two highest rated players in the world, Nigel Richards of New Zealand and David Eldar of Australia. These guys have been playing quite a lot in the recent rounds, and with 3 games to go in the tournament, they're the only 2 in realistic contention for the title. The situation is as follows. Nigel has a 2 clear game lead over David, as well as a 200 point spread margin. That means that David most likely has to administer 3 defeats in a row to Nigel in order to claim the title. There's one other player who could mathematically win. That's Harshan Lamabanasuria of the United Kingdom. Harshan has the same number of wins as Dave, but for him to take the title with the spread situation, it would require Dave to beat Nigel twice and then to draw, while Harshan won all 3 of his games. No other player has enough wins to be in contention for the title, so it's really, in all realistic scenarios, a battle between the current 2 that we're watching. That's David Eldar and Nigel Richards. So to keep the tournament alive, we need to see a win from Dave here, and Jesse, we've seen some fascinating play between these 2 opponents already.
And fortunately for David Eldar, Nigel does have some junk to begin with here, while David Eldar can comfortably score in this opening play.
And guys, if you're interested in the detailed tournament standings, they are up to date on causewaychallenge.com, so just head over there and click through the results to see the Premier Division standings after 42 games.
And Aaron, that is correct. Basically, Nigel just needs to win any one of these and he's set.
Yep. Spread difference between Nigel and Harshan is so enormous that a single win for Nigel Richards should see him comfortably claiming the title. David with a bit to think about on this opening rack, not a straightforward choice here. Creek of course allows a number of extensions across to the right, and he may be hesitating on it for that reason.
Croak with the same problems.
And indeed, he keeps maximum bingo potential there with a shorter play of Oak, giving much less counterplay to Nigel.
And meanwhile, Nigel's face value best option balance would be something like IA2, but whether that goes down is another story.
Indeed. Well, the T hooks onto Oak, so there's the vertical option, but that gives counterplay at F6, so some problems with that option as well. We were saying during the last game when Nigel was way up on Harshan that there might be some spread problems for Dave in this series, but because he too managed to come out a fairly big winner against Esther, the spread difference between these 2 is only 200.
Okay.
It's exactly 200 in favour of Nigel. So with 2 decent wins, Dave could pretty much neutralise that going into the final round, and so that the option is there of basically a straight shootout. That would be very exciting. I'd like to see that. And a nice rack here for Dave on his second play. Doesn't make a 7, but there are some 8s that it will make. I don't, however, think that he's going to get the tiles for it. But he won't be too unhappy having to play with that. Points available as well as bingo leave.
Nigel opts for Kuya.
Again, playing for his optimal rack leave, but he's drawn a unhappy rack there. That won't make much. So Dave has a basic kind of heuristic decision here, whether to play short or to play long. I think he might decide that the long options aren't all that attractive. He does have the non-bingo double-double, Seaward.
Nice.
Maybe there's something even better. Let us know in the chat. Some of you guys may only be joining us today, and we should reiterate that we are not using live to follow these games in the booth. We're just calling the plays as we see them, so do chime in on the chat if you see something that we miss. It's great to have an active chat. We've learned a lot from all the comments during the tournament, and we'd love to keep that going as we see the decisive games unfold.
So looking at Kuya, there's not really any obvious way for David Eldar to score really highly down to the 15H spot, or H15 I should say, given it's vertical.
Yeah, he may like WAAC, keeping DERS, a really, really healthy lead with almost a guarantee that if he picks a 7, he'll have somewhere to play it. But he also may be looking hard at the 44-point play with Seaward, I think.
Yeah.
That's starting to look quite good to me. Dave missed a difficult bingo in his last match with Esther. He wasn't sure if that was unholily.
Oh, that's so low probability. That's hard.
Yep. But I really hope he's not wondering if something like scrawed is a word. Let's think positive. He's not thinking about that. He's comparing whack and Seaward.
Now, you think if he's just going to drop the WA and the C somewhere, talk us through why he would pass on, say, Caw at G6.
Oh, he may well not pass on that. He might play it. Sets up the S nicely. His range finding is probably telling him that Nigel kept something reasonably weak. So he may not be immediately worried about a bingo, with Nigel forced to play for just 9 points in a very open way on that previous turn. CAW very reasonable indeed. And always tricky when you're dealing with moves that have very different characters, as these candidate plays do, and that's why we're seeing Dave taking some time here, assuming that there's no word uncertainty issues in the position for him. But the player on left of screen, David Eldar, he's a tired man. He has had a series of incredibly tough games against Nigel. Some very, very cagey defensive positions. And exhausting positional choices where he's been feeling unsure. They're the types of positions where you feel unsure that you're making the right play time after time after time. I know Dave has been feeling like he's missing stuff. Actually, he's missed very little, but he's been feeling like he has missed things. And of course, he knows we're watching. And so the batteries are being drained much more for Dave than they are for Nigel here. Hopefully he can hold it together. Last game of the day yesterday was not a good one for him. He did win it, but he made a number of mistakes.
Looks like he's opted for a D war so instead to take a maximum points.
Yeah, he's gone for pure score there, and that tells you that he isn't worried about Nigel having a bingo rack, and I think that's correct. I'm not sure if D Wars outscores Seaward or doesn't.
That's 47.
Actually scores 3 more, doesn't it?
So a few more points than Seaward, yeah.
But it gives away more, and he must feel that giving away more is just to his marginal advantage here.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily have to play for a spread as we previously thought, so this would, I think, make the most sense when trying to recover from a spread deficit, but yeah, not nearly so defensive as Aaron Bader points out in the chat.
Yeah, and a difficult calculation over the board, the defensive and points considerations of those candidate plays. I think take the point strategy was very, very reasonable there, and it won't hurt him, almost, but not quite. Nigel just playing off GU, a 2-tile fish. 3-vowel, 2-consonant keep, never ideal on a 2-tile fish, but here, on a very open board with an R and an S floating, just got neutralised, and Nigel draws, well, a bad rack is a 7, but does combine to 8s on this board if the R and S remain untouched. Dave, however, may have a thing or two to say about that. His antennae will be much more heavily raised after that GU play than they would have been after KUIA.
So I would say, imagine something like je at a G13 JEU downward accomplishes what he needs to do.
That's a nice play.
Arrow light is still open, as Josh
Of
mentioned,
course.
to the E, but the je, I think, is the sensible play.
So Nigel bingos. It could be an air ball and one that gives away counterplay. Let's just have a quick look at the position, see if we can spot anything else but je. Dave might be a little bit suspicious about the X.
And there is also Joram through the R and D wars. It's a little bit less direct of a block, but somewhat does.
Oh, I see arterial on the 14 row if je is played, and actually Nigel might play it because of the defensive considerations. I'd like to point out that I noted that without looking it up in Ziziva.
Nice. Well done.
For posterity.
Punit suggests Akaju from the A and D wars. Certainly scores nicely. Doesn't do much to block, but yes, it does score. I think without the inference of a bonus coming very quickly, that would be a candidate play for sure.
Yeah.
And David will also know that JEU would leave the ER combo for possible 9s, but whether he decides that's worth worrying about is another thing. Oh, he does play Akaju. Interesting.
So really offensive play from Dave here at the start of this game. Deciding to take the initiative and go for trade of high-scoring moves rather than doing anything too cagey. Well, I can't really blame him. He's played those cagey boards against Nigel a couple of times now, and Nigel has come out on top. And wow, look at this! A Q and 2 blanks out of the pool for David Eldar. This is exciting stuff.
That is the break that he needs.
Absolutely.
So here comes Soterial for Nigel. That's a fairly textbook straightforward play.
But it only levels the scores.
Yep.
8-point deficit, and Dave would be feeling okay about this, despite. Well, he'd also, if he bothers looking, know that Nigel had a bingo or whatever, so he's not going to be feeling too disheartened about that.
Now, this is one of those interesting ones because he's got the blanks, but otherwise fairly clunky combo. When you play through something like this, do you look at aft and FE and G and not worry about the leave and just continue to rack up the score every 3 bonus, or do you try and balance a little more directly first?
Well, those are basically the options, and you have to just play with what makes you happy, I think. 3 perfectly reasonable strategies you just listed straight away there. As far as I know, he doesn't have any kind of Q play what's thinking about that doesn't spend the blank cheaply, and he thinks that's a very straightforward decision to go for points, which is consistent with the moves he's already made in this game. Waiting for something to happen with that Q, gets an A, he can dump it at M12, and Nigel may well develop the board in a way that gives him further options, and with I's and N's on Nigel's rack, that's not at all unlikely.
So David Eldar not picking a vowel out of the pool after that, but again, because he has both blanks, he's not going to be too terribly shattered by that.
Yeah, and Nigel may well give us some help here. Scoreboard pressure on Nigel. Again, facing a rack that isn't a bingo. AGINT is a really excellent 5-tile leave. So Nigel may just play IN somewhere.
A G and goes for 8.
Similar theme, keeping the ING.
Yeah.
The A helps to leave, but AIN obviously scores a lot of points. So it's worth it for that reason.
And besides hooking the S, it of course hooks the E, so there's lots of options for 7s to play all the way down.
Wait and see if Nigel gets anything. I think not, right?
I'm not seeing it off the top of my head, no.
So Dave doesn't know it, but he's catching a couple of breaks with the tiles Nigel's drawing on one or two of the moves in the early game here. Racks like A, E, G, I, R, T, U, and so on are a bit nightmarish when you're playing for bingos. Of course, it doesn't affect Nigel mentally, that kind of thing.
So, when looking at options for David Eldar, if you're looking at an exchange, I'm not saying it's the right thing, but if you do you keep the Q here? with, say, an R or an N along with those blanks when you exchange. What do you think?
My instinct is not to on this board. You know, because when you're keeping the Q, you want to know that you've got an escape valve, and that's exactly what he lacks here. So if he were to get another pickup that didn't complement the Q, he'd really have made no progress whatsoever with the exchange. So I think safety first. If it's a change, keep the Q. But he thinks it's a play the blank.
Fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating play, I agree, from David Eldar. And that's consistent with the strategy he's employed. He has been taking the points turn after turn after turn here. Does so again. Telegraphs the other blank, of course, to Nigel Richards. And takes only a 27-point
You know what's interesting about this play is with QI, he's basically destroyed the left half of the board, and he believes that he can work better with the right side, and obviously he can with the blank in his rack. So very interesting. He's unfortunately full of confidence.
So with the changed knowledge of having the two blanks in hand, he's switched from playing a pretty open line board to a closed one very rapidly, and he thinks 27 points is enough to merit that strategy. And this game has been developing fast, and following it in real time, there's been a lot to say about a couple of these plays by Dave. And we haven't been able to talk through the position fully, so if you want some instruction, this game, as with many of the other ones, will be available to watch later, and will be available as a Quackle file from causewaychallenge.com if you'd like to think through these positions in a bit more detail yourself. You could, for those who want to improve their game, you know, watching one of these games back in great detail is going to do more than watching 20 of them back rapidly.
Yeah.
I think very few of us would have done what Dave did there, play Q for 20 points.
Yeah.
He may have been a bit concerned about what Nigel was keeping, and therefore decided it was well worth the positional advantage. That may have almost been more important to him than the scoreboard pressure.
It looks like he is playing through, probably with MM of some sort. Oh wait, that must be a mistake with the second blank.
Yeah, we think it's going to be MM keeping the blank back, of course.
There we go. Yeah.
So, suddenly, we thought this wasn't going to be a cagey game. Guys in Quackle, we're sure that must be a mistake as it's input. We see a blank having been entered on the board, and we think it must be a real M. Thank you. And so suddenly, it's going to be another close tactical tussle, which personally I love to watch. Hard to call, and can exhaust our batteries as well. I mean, I don't know really, there's nothing else on really for Dave on that turn.
You know what's creative about this is with the other blank, as the noting, Eldar has the case M setup for the triple M play. Just as a little bit of board dynamics here.
I can guarantee that Dave's already finding this game exhausting. These are not easy plays. They're marginal choices, stylistic to an extent, and he is very concerned about what Nigel might have on his rack here.
And Chris Light comments, this went from being a wide open board to the greatest, I guess, insert your expletive here job I've seen.
Could relax a bit if someone manages to bingo across to 14H. That loose R is very much live in this position.
Nigel, of course, with the homeless hooting on his rack.
Kind of fortunate for Dave that Nigel can't get that down, although of course he did destroy a number of bingo lines quite deliberately.
Yeah.
Kenji points out that 14FB double R is very likely coming down next turn, and I can't disagree. That would be consistent with what Dave has been trying to do over these last couple of turns, while choked up with consonants. Nigel, of course, very much aware that Dave holds the other blank, and these guys are both probably quite afraid of what the other holds. That said, any big board opening play is going to generate significant counterplay for the other. So this is kind of very deadlocked right now, and we wait to see how the board will develop. Must-win game for David Eldar. QI, what an interesting play.
Yeah, and as Aaron notes, there's really no obvious good play for Nigel here that we can see at the moment. It's a really unusual position for him to go through.
Yeah, he's kept ING twice. That was an obvious strategy first time he did it, slightly less obvious the second time, and not at all obvious this time, so he may be thinking of breaking that up.
Aaron suggests horn as an option. Palm, pardon me. Sorry, it looked like an R and an
Freudian
N.
slip.
No, I was looking at the font.
You just misread it.
I did. That is just palm. Aaron says porn is always an option, just not in this game.
Keep it clean in the chat, guys. Nigel's decided to do something.
Gore.
GOR, so he does break up that combo, not surprised.
And leaving himself ing possible. Well, that doesn't make sense anyways, never mind.
Yeah, only INGS would go there, and he doesn't hold that S back. So that's basically a slowing down play, I think. He knows Dave must be choked, and he's given
as well.
Yeah, and he's left David absolutely nothing to play through. So probable change, as Kenji says.
Yeah.
And Dave, no, he doesn't change. He plays Brio.
Huh.
So it is consistent with what he's done, but that's a much more high-risk strategy there. That particular one, keeping the GLNN, that could go wrong. Nigel's only played 2 tiles twice.
Wow.
And a horrible draw for Dave. So I do question that Brio play more than some of the others. I think with the range finding, that's a little risky for my tastes. Of course, both players are still choked, and this is kind of amazing. For a natural, for someone who enjoys strategic battles, this is really a rich game. But for the players, it's sort of fingernails down a chalkboard.
Nigel's playing Vim, and that interesting. It locks things up.
So Nigel's playing to slow Dave down. He obviously knows Dave holds the blank. Dave would be slowed down anyway, and well, is he going to change this time? I mean, I can hardly see a move for him on the board.
Haven't seen what he's done. Did he change or did he drop a letter or two? I didn't see the. There's an exchange, yeah. And Aaron, range as in what letters, how likely someone is to have a certain set of letters based on their previous play.
So Dave Eldar, we're told, kept N blank there. Can't really argue with that. The F14G is a nice feature in that choice of leave. And something a bit more pleasant for Dave now.
He's got vowels. Hey, that's nice.
And he's going to love that S.
Yeah, that's a better definition, Kenji. I didn't know how to say it, but that's basically it.
The set of possible leaves after a certain play. So, what close game? Nigel to play, he leads by 4. He knows that Dave holds the second blank on his rack and has just changed 5 tiles. So very threatening rack from Nigel's point of view, but of course bingos that Dave could have actually don't play for all that much on the board, because the end column, I should say, is the only really plausible line, and even the F column won't score all that much. You need to jag a heavy letter on a TLS to make much of those lines. And so Nigel basically playing his own game here, working his own rack around to something more pleasant while just keeping a little bit of scoreboard edge. And the classically obvious line here for Dave is to play Nix at 14A, opening up that 9 timer.
Yeah, and then in the chat, Kenji believes that XIS is coming down, but after that, there now Kenji says maybe not.
The XIS was being suggested at N10?
I'm guessing N10, yeah.
XI C14 as a defensive play has been proposed as well. I think to keep Nigel worried, the 14A play looks a bit more appealing to me. What do you reckon, Jesse?
Nix would be certainly fearless to have Nigel play in a way that doesn't actually close the board, unless he played just 2 tiles.
Yeah, well, Nigel's just played 4 tiles for only 15 points.
Yeah, the thing with the Nix is you can play just 1 tile underneath the N for not many points, or 1 above, 1 below for not many points, and that's the only way that you can hypothetically shut down the board while playing over there. I think it's worth looking at a little bit in more detail, because I don't think it's very easily blocked unless you have something like a C or a B.
I guess the A12 to A15 is a bit of a threat back after Nix. Lots of people in the chat like XI, and that is what David Eldar plays.
It's a little more safe, doesn't have so much variance, yeah, and as Chris said, Nix allows you to lose in a worst case scenario.
Yeah, despite the impressive range of opinions in favour of XI, I still think I would have played Nix there. But you know what? I've never won a Causeway Scrabble challenge either.
There you go. And Eldar is looking nice with the letters on his rack now. And then Bharadwaj says Ananas looks pretty nice. I would not disagree.
Well, what Nigel does here will affect how content Dave is to play down the end column.
There you go.
And it's not a full block, but it's a partial block, and it may turn out to be a complete block for what Dave actually has. And this is a bit of a familiar position for Dave. Nigel's pulled out exactly the correct positional block a few times in their recent games. People might remember Cruzier yesterday.
Yep. That's a bit of a mind game. Nah, yeah. NA in some way is coming down, not I4 to create an Anna hook off of the B in Rio.
And these players inching their way towards 200 apiece. Must-win game for David Eldar. And no bingos down the end column for him. Another play that hasn't yet been suggested in the chat is D12 Nain, N-A-I-N. I'd like to hear people's views on that in addition to the I4 NA play.
And Kunit suggests Ain at 6J. I think a little more dangerous because it offers the E hook, and there's tons of E's on the scene to David, so I think I would probably pass on that one. Kitty, this is the last game before lunch, so we'll be taking a break and coming back, I believe, for 1:45, if I remember correctly. So we'll let you know exactly when we're coming back, but there will be 2 games after this one, and then the event is concluded.
Kenji, very firm that opening west is not the correct strategy here.
Colin, this is round 43 out of 45.
I feel for Dave here. So many tough decisions in this game. He'll be sapped. And he knows he's got to beat Nigel not only here, but twice more.
One step at a time in the meantime. About leveling the game and how to figure out which of his setups are the best, because you know that's all he's considering.
And he's down to 8 minutes with a lot of plays left to make here. Kenji thinks it's a reasonably comfortable position for Dave, presumably because of the major themes of a controllable board and the second blank in hand. In answer to Judy Cole, who asks whether Nigel will get Gibsonized if he seals up the tournament, the answer to that is yes. And we'll see the playoffs for the minor placings in that case in the later games.
So Nab instead of Na.
Setting up the S. Creative play was not suggested. Kenji does not like this at all. How many? I've lost count of the number of setups and counter setups we've seen between these two guys. It's a part of their arsenal that's much less a part of other top players' arsenals, and I think it's one of the reasons that these two guys stand out a bit. I mean, I've almost made as few direct setups in my whole tournament career as I've seen on table 1 in this tournament. And Kenji was saying yesterday that he'd like to write a piece on why top players make setups, what it does, and why it's effective. And personally, I'd love to read that because it's part of the game I'd like to add to my own arsenal in the event of a comeback. The anticipated Chris May comeback.
There you go. As you win this event the next time it's played.
Oh God, I can. Top table annotations stress me out. It's a weakness. I don't play as well on the top table, so yeah. Anyway, it's not all about me. In fact, it's not about me at all. It's about David Eldar and Nigel Richards.
It's not all about you, really? Shocked. So Chopin to block the double-double at the very least on the newly created lane.
Yeah, and he puts a little bit more in the bank in terms of score as well. And now Dave does have bingos to choose from. But they're not all pleasant choices, so some time may well be spent here as well. Just quickly scanning his options, and I don't think that there's anything that he's going to like that knocks off that nab hook. there are bingos down the N column in addition to bingos on the 4th row. But nothing that doesn't give counterplay to Nigel Richards. Dave's range finding, if I have this right, may not make him so concerned about the A4S, say, if he plays something like Sangeet. Looks like he's played already, either that or he's counting tiles in the bag. I think he's played. Yeah, he's drawn, so I expect he's pulled the plug on and played the bingo there, and I think I can't argue with it really, I would have done the same. Sangeet looked like the play to me as well. What about you, Jesse?
I'm not disagreeing with it, looks good.
Kenji's been seeing this game a bit differently to us. Kenji, do you think bingo was the correct choice there? He's pulled not a bad follow-up rack, he won't be disappointed with that. Two S's left in the pool. Neither player holds one, so they're both to be drawn. That E5 has been slightly defused by the last couple of turns, but still there is a scoring option. Chris Leip is of the view that Dave's last two moves have been inconsistent with his previous play in terms of the position, and well, I'm not going to try and work my way through that logic on the air. That would be a good one to expand on in the chat for those who might be interested.
Yeah, Kenji clarifies that after nap, yeah, Sangeet is okay. He just still doesn't like nap because it opens up the left portion of the board.
Nigel Richards draws nicely.
Attabrin.
Holds Attabrin.
And it does play. It plays at 3E. There you go.
And David Eldar, perhaps by some good fortune, blocks it, but he plays a nice scoring play. And his board vision has been really nice with those sorts of overlapping plays throughout this tournament. Malva was another example.
Yeah, that was great.
And so UDOS was suggested from A1 as a possible play there, but Dave has done it, and well, he'll be happy to find out after the game that that's
what he had to do.
Yeah.
Not Udos, that is. Poudre, or however you say this. It's probably a French word.
And so that west of the board is now quite barren because of the Z and the C placed where they are. There'll need to be a developing play there before any other action happens.
Eldar, meanwhile, is back to his old ways of having no vowels.
We should note that the final H is still in the pool, if our Quackle pool is correct, and that means that there's an E-column play there, which may be helpful for some scoring later on towards the end of the game. But a very difficult board to play positionally on here. Nigel plays nib, knocking out the top.
Interesting. Yeah, that basically removes that whole thing as a factor and just leaves the far right.
So Dave's lead eroding here. And all consonants again, and Nigel with a bingo in the end column.
Oh.
And that is going to be, I think, downright impossible to block for Dave with what he's got, if that's even what he's thinking about doing. So now things look bleak. And I think Kenji feels that his positional commentary is vindicated by the way in which things have played out here. That NAB has been questioned by many players in the chat. And well, this was a complex position, very hard to call. We can only recommend further study if you guys are interested, and perhaps a bit of Quackle work, although Quackle won't play these positions necessarily in a very strong way.
So Widest was being typed, but I'm not seeing it committed, so maybe Eldar hasn't actually played it.
So, well, if he does play it, Nigel bingos for not very much. There might be counterplay here, and Dave could still be in the game. So let's
draw some
balls. Game not necessarily over, but Dave has to get a good pick up to deep. Ooh, and he doesn't play droll.
So he's saving himself Widest for return, it looks like, in case he doesn't draw very well, and keeping the W to score on the right side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nigel, I think, must bingo.
Well, let's see what we've got. We've got 5 in the pool. Eldar's now got some fouls.
Not a bad draw. He will be able to score at 8L, if, at the very least, if Nigel bingos. He may not like that play positionally. Quick quiz, what's the 8 with A in David Eldar's rack? Meanwhile, 5 tiles in the pool, so a bingo from Nigel empties the bag. Dave will be the play in a 7-on-5 endgame, and Nigel will have to pull out absolute junk to lose it, I think. Something like VWTTT.
Oh, soft teeth. There we go, and Mike Francis as well. Nice.
That's not drawable for Nigel. So to lose, he'd have to get something like, I don't know, I didn't really get a chance to look, but VW at least, and probably 3 other consonants. If David Eldar is to pull this one out, Nigel ominously sets up Series 8. And Nigel is no doubt calculating his chances of winning the end game after bingoing here. So we know what the pool is, in actuality.
Vital is the pool.
It's AILVT. And I assume there's a couple of you with Quackle. Let us know what the optimal endgame is and whether or not it is a magic win for David Eldar with his fairly flexible letters.
I mean, the reflex play is a wit, but if you can possibly score separately with the W and the H and prevent an out in 1, then that would be even better. So I'm assuming he'll be looking for something of that nature.
And a quick scan of the boards. I don't see any place for Nigel to get rid of all of it.
I don't either.
But we'd love to hear the Quackle optimal line if anyone can produce it quickly. And then we'll see if David Eldar can come up with it. And I'm not completely convinced that this endgame isn't a win for Dave. He's got big points available in the O column. Something like WHEES. Oh, I beg your pardon, that's not a word. Forget that one.
I was looking at wheat, but I remembered that's not a word.
Yeah. M4 Vital is a threatened outplay. Of course, Dave will occupy that, as Chris Lipe points out. What I'm picking up from the chat is that Dave probably can't quite get there.
Yeah, I haven't calculated it yet, like after a play like Wit at 8L.
And Dave's under serious pressure here, the clock's counting down. It's a must-win game for him, and you can see his body language.
He's hitting himself or something.
I hope it's not WHEES.
I think he's probably just calculated that he can't win.
We still haven't had anyone on the chat tell us that it's a definite loss for him, so...
HETE and widest for the sequence in 2. That's nice.
That's really nice. And we think he probably saw widest as an option when he played Droll before.
Will Anderson, hello. Has to block and set up EWT. David's going to lose by 1.
So the HETE, I guess, didn't quite get there either. And what a shame if Dave loses this game by 1 or 2 points. He could have had the game and kept himself in the title fight, but it may well be a Nigel Richards win and the tournament with it that we're seeing here. Dave down to his last 2 minutes. Can he somehow find a winning line?
And with the body language that he hits the clock, he's playing Wit.
He's playing Wit, and we think this is a 2-point loss according to Kenji. So a real shame. Nigel Richards jailbreaks to beat David Eldar, who had the 2 blanks in a close mid-game, chose to play one for 21 points only with QI, keeping 5 consonants then played and played and played. He never exchanged, did he? Or did he finally forced to?
Exchange, yeah.
Finally forced to after not getting a vowel for about 4 turns in a row. Opened with NA. And then Nigel played exactly how he needed to keep himself in it. Played a wonderful DYNEL to block the N column. Played a wonderful Chopin to block the E column.
There goes that.
And the beards.
So now he would magically need 16 to tie.
Dave has no time whatsoever on the clock and obviously can't afford to go over. So guys in the chat, if you could just confirm clearly for us, we think from what you've said that there was no winning line for Dave and that his best result was a 1-point loss with optimal endgame play. Is that correct?
He's just going to play, yeah. So just,
Will Anderson agrees with that assessment. Thanks, Will. And so David Eldar has not done it.
Yeah, so it comes up 5 points short.
And he will be feeling absolutely gutted. Congratulations, Nigel, for winning the tournament.
Yeah. And you know what, again, as we've said earlier today and throughout the tournament, it's to the credit of the rest of the field that is taking this long in a tournament of 45 games for the winner to be decided. We know how strong Nigel is, and of course how strong David is, and a number of the other players we've seen this week. So, you know, credit to a really good fight. But this one is now officially decided, and David's laughing. I think he almost feels better that he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. He can just, you know, play the last few games for second, ideally.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking back and admiring Nigel Richards' play. He is so good on those close boards and tactical exchanges. He almost never, ever lets anything slip. And you can see it in the results. Time after time after time, he ends up a narrow winner in these games. And he has done what he does best. Won games of Scrabble against the other best players in the world. He's got an unbeatable position now in this tournament.
Yep. So in the meantime, I might just go check on the other boards and leave you to end the crowd.
Indeed.
Here.
And so we've had a huge number of plays that could be dissected in a post-mortem of this game. I was very interested by Dave's early choice of D Wars over Seaward as a positional choice, and that seemed to set up a certain strategy for the middle game that he executed over the following few turns, but then there was opinion in the chat that Dave actually changed strategy in an inconsistent way. Chris Lapp asks, will we be keeping Nigel on the stream? Nigel will probably be Gibson here, in which case we will see the fight for second place over the next 2 games. Jesse has news.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to Michael to get official news, but we had talked about earlier in the tournament what would happen when Nigel, well, if, but now when Nigel wins it, that we would feature the next board after that happens. So it will likely be the Table 2 matchup on that board. Jesse Day just beat Esther Perrins. I have an update from that board, so Jesse will move to 26 wins. I do not have any news from Harshan Labarasuria and Ayarinde Saidu. I couldn't see anything on their sheets. But we are going to go for lunch here and come back with the last 2 games of coverage, and that'll be the board 2 games on the table. Michael's aiming for 1:15. It is 1:45, more or less, here at local time, so we have just a half an hour before we come back for the last 2 games. Thanks for joining us, and we're going to see who takes the second and third spots based on these next 2 games.
Many congratulations to Nigel Richards for a superb tournament and some very, very entertaining games. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Be back in about a half hour.